Hello guys, welcome back to another video. I haven't done a video on an unsolved case in a while, so today we're going to be talking about the unsolved murder of Missy Bevers. When I first started this channel, I knew I was eventually going to do a video on this case because it really scared me when I first heard about it back in 2016. And what makes this case very interesting is the police actually have video of the suspected killer, and the footage it's really creepy. It gave me chills when I first saw it. And what's mind-blowing about this case is even though we literally have video of the suspect, they have never been identified. There are lots of interesting theories on who killed Missy, who might have been involved, and what went down on the last day of her life. So let's get into it. Terry Strickland was born on August 9th, 1970 in Graham, Texas. Her legal name was Terry, but she liked to go by Missy and had been using that name for almost her whole life, it seems like. Missy was the middle of 3 children. She had an older brother named Clifford and a younger brother named Clint. Missy was said to be a very generous and kind-hearted person. Even from a very young age, she was very willing to give everything she had to help others. Her friends described her as a very loyal and supportive friend, and a lot of people described her as very inspiring because she was a very motivated person. If she wanted to do something and she put her mind to it, nothing was going to stand in her way. In 1997, Missy got introduced to Brandon Bevers through one of her friends. Missy and Brandon hit it off right away, and 9 months later, they were married. They then went on to have 3 daughters, Hannah, Allie, and Sarah, and their family lived in Red Oak, Texas. Missy was a very dedicated mother. Her daughters were her whole world, and she was so proud of them. She did everything she could to be a supportive mother to them and wanted to be as involved as she could in their lives. One thing to know about Missy is she was said to be a motivator. She loved to encourage her family and friends to live out their dreams, and she would cheer them on in whatever they were doing. She believed that all things are possible if you just believe in yourself. She had been a motivator her whole life and always looked for opportunities to get people excited and involved. She loved to teach and share any knowledge that she had that could potentially better the lives of others, and this really showed through when, after her undergrad, Missy went back to school and earned her teaching certificate in special education. Missy taught special needs children for several years until the birth of her first daughter. Overall, Missy was a confident, inspiring, and headstrong woman and mother who was passionate about life, passionate about her faith, and those who knew her will forever miss her positive energy. In the years leading up to her murder, Missy became passionate about fitness. She first worked on herself and trained pretty hardcore to get to a place where she could actually coach. She had been a stay-at-home mom while her daughters were younger, but once they got a bit older and were all in grade school, she decided once again to become a teacher or a fitness instructor. Missy worked for Camp Gladiator as a coach, which is a company that offers a wide variety of workout programs and classes. And this was a perfect fit for Missy. She took her role at Camp Gladiator very seriously. She not only wanted to help her students become more physically fit, but she also wanted them to be mentally, emotionally, and spiritually fit. And her students just loved her. They loved her energy, and unsurprisingly, she really motivated them. So now let's talk about what happened on April 18th, 2016. Missy was supposed to teach a Camp Gladiator workout class that morning at 5 a.m. The class was to be held at the Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas. It seems like the church had an event space that Missy would use to teach workout classes from time to time. The evening before the class was supposed to take place, Midlothian had some pretty bad weather. It was storming and pouring rain, but Missy posted on Facebook and said, "If it's raining, we're still training. And then no excuses, you are gladiators." basically telling her students that class would still be happening regardless of the weather. The church was about a 20-minute drive from Missy's home in Red Oak, so the next morning, Missy got up at the crack of dawn and headed to Midlothian. She arrived at the church around 4:20 a.m. that morning to set up for her class. Then, just before 5 a.m., a couple of her students showed up to the church for class, and when they entered, they found Missy lying on the floor, covered in puncture wounds on her chest and head. They called the police immediately, but unfortunately, Missy didn't survive the very brutal attack, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. She was 45 years old and left behind 3 beautiful daughters, with her youngest daughter only being 8 years old at the time. Her death just devastated her family and friends and completely shocked the community. There were just so many disturbing and upsetting aspects to the murder. The victim being a mother of 3, it happening in a church, and the fact that she clearly suffered a very violent attack was really scary. Midlothian hadn't had a murder in 7 years when this happened, and it was considered a very safe area. Police soon checked the surveillance cameras from inside the church, and that's when they discovered the creepiest footage of who is believed to have killed Missy. At 3:50 a.m. that morning, the cameras picked up an unknown person breaking into the church before Missy even arrived. They are fully disguised in what's believed to be faux SWAT gear. They are wearing a police vest, a helmet, a mask, and big black boots, walking calmly around the church. Although the security cameras didn't actually capture how this person broke in, they were able to confirm they broke a window in the kitchen, then stuck their hand through the broken window and unlocked the door in the kitchen and gained access to the church that way. One of the first things you'll notice is the suspect appears to be in no hurry. Different security cameras around the church capture them strolling around at an almost leisurely pace, opening doors and entering various rooms and closets inside the church. In this angle, you can see they have a headlamp on before they go into the worship room in the center of the building. There are no cameras inside the worship center, so we don't know what they were doing in there. At one point, they try to open a locked storage closet and then break the glass to gain access with whatever weapon they're holding, which is believed to be a hammer. The police have never actually said what the murder weapon was, but they did say it is consistent with whatever the suspect is carrying around. And this murder weapon was left at the scene next to Missy's body. You can also see that they're holding something in their left hand. Looks like a white box, but you can't really make out what it is exactly. And this is where the security footage that was released to the public ends. The suspect spent about half an hour in the church and did one full circle around the building. This suspect was still in the church when Missy arrived that morning at 4:20 a.m. She got there and probably thought she was completely alone when, in reality, she was entering a very dangerous situation. The Midlothian police have never released footage of Missy entering the church, but they confirmed they do have it, and they can see her arrive and head to the worship center where the killer was lying in wait. Since there are no cameras in the worship center, the police don't have footage of the actual murder. Unfortunately, the cameras on the exterior of the church weren't working that night. So we don't know what went on outside the church. We don't know how the suspect got there. Did they drive? Did they walk? Did they come out of the woods? We don't know. Police promptly released the security footage to the public in hopes that someone could help identify this person. I'll leave the full video linked below in case you want to go watch the whole thing. They gave a brief press conference that day explaining that the investigation had just started, but that they were keeping an open mind on what possibly could have happened, whether it was a burglary gone wrong or a targeted attack. And the police chief also said that the circumstances were pretty unusual.
The video depicts an unknown male walking inside the church building dressed in police-type clothing and wearing a helmet and gloves. He is designed to look like a police officer. His intent was to look like a police officer. It's just an odd, random situation that they would actually happen to come into a building that was being burglarized on a Monday morning. This is an extremely unusual situation for the city of Midlothian. We have a very, very safe community. In fact, this is going to be the first event of my tenure here in almost 10 years, so nothing like this has happened before.
Missy's case started gaining national and even worldwide attention very quickly, and this is because the footage of the killer wearing that getup was so creepy and mysterious. In the weeks following Missy's murder, the security footage of the suspect was almost everywhere. Every news station was reporting on it. There are a ton of YouTube videos analyzing it, and the original video has over 300,000 views. But despite all of this, the suspect in the video was never identified. So let's talk about what we know about the suspect. What does this footage tell us? Well, obviously this person went out of their way to make sure they were fully in disguise. They are head to toe in SWAT gear with not an inch of skin showing. They are even wearing gloves, so as far as we know, no fingerprints were left at the scene. And the Midlothian police have said that this is faux SWAT gear. The suspect has a very distinct walk, with their feet turned out, kind of like a duck. It's kind of a stiff walk, and sometimes their feet drag when they step. This could be from an injury, or maybe their boots are too big. It could also be just a walk that they are faking. I wouldn't put it past this person to do this and go the extra mile to make sure they are unrecognizable. The walk could be lots of things. Maybe they're overweight. They are estimated to be between 5'2" and 5'7", and police determine this based on how they measure up beside the doors inside the church. Initially, it was thought that Missy had interrupted a burglary at the church, and that was why she was killed. But when you take a closer look at the way the suspect moves around the church and vandalizes it, it doesn't seem genuine. They put almost no effort in trying to break into rooms. They're not in a rush whatsoever either. You'd think if you were robbing the place, you'd want to get in and out as fast as possible. It looks like they're just trying to stage the scene, make it look like they were robbing the church. There was also nothing taken from the church. There was cash in the office that was untouched, and Missy was also wearing jewelry that wasn't taken. So this led many people to believe that this was a targeted attack on Missy. Also, Missy had advertised the date, time, and location of her class on Facebook. So really anybody could have known where she would be that day and at what time. Did they know that they were being recorded? I mean, probably. They did go to a lot of trouble to disguise their identity and act like they were genuinely robbing/vandalizing the church. One of the most heavily debated aspects of this footage is whether the suspect is a man or a woman. It's really hard to tell because they're just fully disguised, and police said it definitely could be a woman and that they haven't ruled this out. There is one point where people say they have this stance, and something about it looks kind of feminine, just the way they move there, but I'm not sure. The police have never said specifically how Missy was killed, but they did say that she was found with puncture wounds and that the murder weapon was consistent with whatever weapon the suspect is seen carrying around. So one can conclude that she was bludgeoned to death with a hammer. Is that something a woman would do? I mean, yes, of course it's possible, but I feel like it's pretty unlikely, and that it's a lot more likely that that's something a male suspect would do. Since the security cameras on the exterior of the church weren't working that night, they don't know what time the suspect actually got to the church. They only know what time they were seen on the inside of the church, which was at 3:50 a.m. A witness driving by the church reported seeing a dark SUV pulling out of the church parking lot around 4:30 a.m. that morning, so basically right after they would have killed Missy. Unfortunately, the witness doesn't recall any other details about the car, just that it was a dark SUV. Police then started asking all the nearby businesses for any security footage they have from that night, hoping that possibly the car was caught driving by that night. The Creekside Church is located on Highway 287, kind of in a remote area with fields and crops surrounding it. There is an airport nearby and a wedding venue across the street. There's also an SWFA outdoor store down the street that sells camping and hunting equipment. And this store captured something very strange in their parking lot the night Missy was murdered. On April 18th at 2 a.m., so roughly 2 hours before the suspect broke into the church, a car can be seen behaving pretty odd. The unidentified car pulled into the SWFA outdoor store parking lot off the main road and turns its headlights off. The store was closed, obviously, since it was in the middle of the night, and we can see it's pretty dark and pouring rain. The car then drives around aimlessly in the parking lot for 6 minutes, stopping and starting, turning its headlights on and off randomly. The car pulled into a parking spot and stopped briefly before leaving and driving off. Unfortunately, the video quality was too low to make out any kind of a license plate. The footage is definitely weird. Like, why were they doing that? It's pretty suspicious. Police can't say for certain that it's related to Missy's murder, but considering how close the SWFA store was to the church, it's 100% worth looking into. Police believe the car is a 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima, and they quickly released the footage to the public, asking the driver to please come forward, as they don't consider them a person of interest necessarily, but rather they believe they could have been a witness to something that happened at the church just down the road. But what makes this footage even more suspicious is the driver was never identified and they never came forward. There is an interesting theory about what possibly might be going on here. So police think that the killer broke into the church by breaking a window near the kitchen and then sticking their arm through the door and unlocking it. One possible explanation is, what if the killer went earlier to the church, broke a window, and then drove off and killed time in a nearby parking lot and waited to see if an alarm would trigger and the police would show up. But that doesn't really explain their strange behavior. Like, if they were just there to kill time, why drive around, stop and start, and turn the headlights on and off? It's very strange. Maybe they were just anxious and couldn't sit still because they were about to commit a murder. As part of the investigation, police obtained a search warrant for records from cell phone towers within 5 miles of the crime scene from the night of the murder. But as far as we know, even this didn't help identify the killer or the suspicious driver. Right after her Camp Gladiator students found her that morning, one of them called her husband, Brandon, to let him know what had happened. He was actually out of state on the day of Missy's murder, and he had been for a number of days prior. He was in Mississippi at the time on a company-wide organized fishing trip that had been planned for quite a while. Brandon was obviously heartbroken by the news. He had last talked to Missy the night before when they called to say goodnight. He quickly got into a rental car and drove back to Texas. When he arrived home hours later, he was greeted by a slew of reporters waiting on his front lawn to talk to him. And I'll play a part of his interview now.
I was in Biloxi, Mississippi, about to go on a fishing trip down on the Chandeleur Islands, and I heard about it this morning. I received a phone call from a couple of Missy's campers, and had I been out on that ship, I would have had no contact for a few days, but
what do you want people to know about your wife?
My wife was she was very passionate about transforming people's lives physically and mentally. She became involved in physical fitness a few years ago, and she transformed herself into just a very fit person, and her desire was to do that for others. And I've seen it. I've seen her do that for others, and I've seen the impact that it's had on other people, and I'm very thankful for that, and I'm thankful for her being such a good wife and a good mother to our children. And she's had a very impactful relationship with a lot of people here in our community, and I'm very thankful for all of it.
This interview was just totally picked apart, and he does seem a little emotionless, but you have to remember that he literally just found out that his wife was murdered only a couple of hours ago, so he was probably just in shock. Brandon Bevers was questioned by the police, which he couldn't have avoided. Whenever someone is murdered, their spouse is always looked into first, especially when it's a woman. the husband is usually involved. They were together for almost 20 years and had 3 daughters together. They appeared to be a happy family, and when police spoke to Brandon, he confirmed he had no idea who would harm his wife. When police started digging into Missy's personal life a little bit more, they uncovered that she and Brandon were having some marital problems. There was some evidence of financial problems as the couple was having a hard time making ends meet. And I just want to preface this next part by saying that there is very little information about this out there because it is still an ongoing investigation. But during their investigation, they found evidence to support that Missy was having an affair at the time of her murder. Basically, all we know is that police got a warrant to search all of Missy's communication online and on LinkedIn, which was the site she used pretty frequently. Police then contacted a person of interest that Missy had been communicating with on LinkedIn. That person admitted they had been communicating with Missy since January of 2016 and continued to until she died. Their messages back and forth began in a casual manner, but ultimately turned flirtatious and familiar. There was also evidence in Missy's text messages of extramarital affairs, and this person or people's identities have never been released to the public. And based on the search of her cell phone, police then obtained search warrants for the cell phone data of a list of people. And on that list was Brandon Bevers, his parents, a man Missy knew from Camp Gladiator, and his wife. The list also contained a number of Missy's friends. We don't know if the search warrants turned up anything useful. All we know is that all the people on the list were very cooperative. Given the marital problems, the police looked into Brandon in depth, but he was quickly ruled out as a suspect in the video as he had an airtight alibi since he was in Mississippi on that fishing trip. Receipts, witness accounts, and cell phone data confirmed that he was 100% in Mississippi on the day that she was killed. There was also no evidence that he hired anyone to kill Missy or that he was involved in any way. I personally don't believe that Brandon was involved, and no marriage is perfect, and I feel like if you start digging into anyone's marriage, you're gonna find stuff. But still, people are very suspicious of him, mainly because of the whole it's always the husband mentality, especially when affairs are involved. But again, there's just no evidence that he was involved. Just 4 days after Missy's murder, the police actually received a tip in the case. Employees from a dry cleaners in Midlothian called police to notify them that a man had dropped a shirt off to be cleaned that had blood on it, and that they believed the man had tried to clean off the blood before dropping it at the dry cleaners. That man was Randy Bevers, Brandon's father and Missy's father-in-law. The shirt was a woman's white long-sleeve shirt. The press was all over this, and when he went into the police station for questioning, someone took a video of his walk, and it looked similar to the way the suspect was walking in the church security footage. Randy told the police that the blood on the shirt was from his dog, who had gotten into a fight with another dog. The dog's blood got on his wife's shirt when they took the dog to the animal hospital. Unfortunately, the dog didn't make it, poor thing. Randy and his wife, they aren't from Midlothian, but they were staying with relatives after the news about Missy, so that's why they were in the area. Police corroborated his claims, and the vet confirmed his version of events. They also tested the blood found on the shirt and confirmed that it was animal blood. Also, Randy had a really solid alibi for the day that Missy was murdered, as he was in California. Brandon Bevers said he is actually really thankful that the dry cleaners called it in, because that's what this case needs. It needs people to call in tips and keep their eyes open for connections. So now let's talk about the theories on who possibly could have murdered Missy. Was Missy just at the wrong place at the wrong time? Probably not. This murder was pretty well executed and required a fair bit of planning. If this was a burglary gone wrong, well, the suspect kind of forgot the burglary part of it, as nothing was taken. So it doesn't add up. As we talked about before, Brandon Bevers has pretty much been ruled out, although there definitely is motive. Brandon did confirm to police that he was aware of Missy's affairs, and affairs are frequently motive for murder, but as said before, there is no evidence that he was involved. Speaking of affairs though, could the person Missy was having an affair with also have a spouse, and that spouse found out and wanted Missy gone? And this makes me think back to the man that Missy knew through Camp Gladiator, who was on the search warrant cell phone data list, and his wife was also on that list. But that's completely speculative. Another theory that has been thrown out there was Missy possibly being stalked? A friend of Missy's told police that only 3 days before her murder, Missy received a weird message on LinkedIn. Missy showed her the message, and the friend told police that it was from a male unknown to both of them, and that they agreed the message was creepy and strange. Police looked into this, and they've never said if they found anything interesting. We don't even know what the message said or who sent it. Her friends at the gym also reported to police that Missy had barely been going to the gym as often as she usually did in the weeks leading up to her murder. Missy trained every day. She had a strict workout schedule and had for years. So to stop going was very out of character for her. Was there someone at the gym who was bothering her or that she was scared of? But there was no indication that Missy was scared. Her licensed gun was found inside her car in the church parking lot the morning she was killed, so she didn't feel the need to bring it in with her. If she was being stalked though, it would have been easy for them to know where she would be that morning since she did share it on Facebook. There was another person that police looked into though. Several months after the murder and following many tips about the same person, police interviewed former Lancaster police officer Bobby Wayne Henry. Bobby was a licensed security guard who worked at Missy's funeral, and he also attended the Creekside Church. Bobby was suspended from the police force after a sexual assault case in 1996, and he used to work as a tactical officer, and he admitted to police that he still owned his riot gear, but promised that it didn't fit anymore. He also owned a car very similar to the car seen in the SWFA security footage, and he walked with a limp. Police sought the advice of a forensic podiatrist to compare the walk of Bobby and the masked assailant in the video footage, but the findings were inconclusive. However, the main issue with Bobby being the suspect from the video is that he was way too tall to be the person in the video. Bobby was 6'1", when the maximum height the suspect in the video could be was 5'7". Still though, police obtained a search warrant to search his home, and when they did, looking for evidence of Missy's murder, they actually found something else, and that was CP. In June 2017, Bobby was arrested for the CP and took part in an interview from jail. He denied knowing Missy or even her name, and eventually his alibi for the night of Missy's murder was corroborated. He was eventually ruled out as a suspect in Missy's murder, but still people are pretty suspicious because it seems like there are a lot of coincidences there. So where does this case stand today? It's 2023 now, and it's been 7 years since Missy's murder. On the anniversary, a small group in Midlothian gathered to remember Missy. They planted a tree at a park in her honor. Police have received hundreds of tips on who the suspect in the footage might be over the years, but nothing conclusive has ever materialized as far as we know. Family and friends do their best to keep Missy's memory alive because that's what will lead to tips. The Midlothian police have said many times that this is not a cold case yet, and they are still dedicating a couple hours a day to investigate the tips that continue to come in from around the world. The department promised to follow up on all credible leads that continue to come in. It's just insane to me that this case is still unsolved. Like, we literally have video of the suspect, but at the same time, it seems like whoever they were, they planned this pretty well, and it was pretty well executed. This case is really in the public's hands now, and that's what's gonna get this case finally solved. Someone knows something, and it all depends on when they decide to come forward with that information. I hope they decide to do that sooner rather than later, and my heart really goes out to Missy's daughters, Brandon, and her whole family. I hope they eventually get the closure that they so desperately deserve. That's all I have for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more true crime content. Let me know what you think about this case in the comment section below, and I will see you next time.